All right. This week we have Patrick McNamara joining us. He's arguably the best running physio in Sydney from the running room. He's a fellow podcaster with the podcast That's Running. Bit of a freak runner too, sub 240 marathon, sub 4 of 6 foot. He's ran UTMB, probably the most significant trail race in the world. And there's a YouTube video, the 100 miler, documenting that. And he's also a little bit of a modeler, influencer, a few sponos, ASICs, nut zest, I think it is. Yeah, he can do it all.
Fixed nutrition.
And we've been fortunate enough. He's unfortunate for Pat. He's had a bit of COVID recently. But to our fortune, we've been able to get him on today. And today we are going to keep continuing on with this mini series about how to be a better runner and deal with the question how to deal with injuries and avoid injuries. So that's why we've got Pat on to help kind of flesh out that question a little bit. Yeah, so welcome, Patty.
Thanks, bro. Thanks for having me. That's a hell of an intro. Yeah, I love running, and it's kind of funny to hear all that said back to you. But yeah, everything in my life revolves around running in some way or another. I think it's fantastic. And until you try and hold a conversation with someone who doesn't run, and you're like, oh shit, like that's all I do. But yeah, so I'm happy to be here, and I can chat about whatever we're going to chat about. We'll chat for hours. So try and keep me brief where you have to.
So we're just going to start off with a little bit of a training update. Yeah, what are you training for at the moment, Patty? You got any races in mind? Or
yeah, I've got a few. I'm getting into triathlon actually, so a lot of my focus is on swimming and cycling at the moment. Got a half Ironman coming up, but I'll try and do a full Ironman for the first time in the start of May. So that's the big goal for me. Learn how to cycle and swim properly. The running bit will be all right, but it's the other two that will get me.
Yeah, geez. And I guess COVID's kind of been a bit of a spanner in the works. How'd you go about training for that this week?
Yeah, like I've gone from like 30k runs to like 30 steps a day. It's been so weird. But I've also just been like laying down. I felt pretty shit this week, but today was the first day I feel good enough to do some movement. So I'm stuck in my bedroom. So I can't go anywhere, but I've got some dumbbells. I was able to do a little bit of a strength workout today. So that's the first thing I've done all week. My Strava's looking a bit bleak. Yeah, it's a bit weird. I don't recommend getting COVID. It's not good for training.
And so, yeah, it threw you around a bit. You feeling all right still? Or?
Yeah, day 2 was pretty horrible. I didn't get out of bed much on day 2. Day 3 and 4, I got a little bit better. And today's day 5, and I actually feel like 90% better today. Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of laying down. Yeah, well, it wasn't particularly fun, but I think I'm definitely past it now for sure.
Yeah, that's good, mate. What about you, Smitty? How's your training week been going?
Yeah, not so good. I was a close contact, so I'm in a similar situation as you, Patty, just locked away. So I haven't been able to run or leave the house, which is a bit challenging, especially when I've just started to get into a bit of a stride with training and build back up to, I think it was just past 100Ks. So yeah, just got to sit tight and not much I can do. I'm lucky I didn't get COVID. So, but that's not much to update here, Dom, in terms of training.
Yeah, it's been, a pretty solid week. It was a big week last week. I think I was just trying to do too much though, ramping up volume and intensity. So this week I've haven't done too many sessions. I did one session on Tuesday, and then I've slowed down all my other runs as well, just to kind of handle the mileage. Yeah, training for 6 foot at the moment. So yeah, I think last week was probably my first real week of training, and I'm just trying to get used to the higher mileage. I've got a bit of a session planned for tomorrow on Saturday, and yeah, it'll probably be like 150 Ks again this week, which is good for me. Should we jump
150 Ks is good for anyone, Dom.
Oh yeah,
it's just good. You got to be happy with that.
It's impossible for most, good for some.
So yeah, today's question that we're dealing with is how to avoid and deal with running injuries. So I guess how we can approach this is, what are the most common sort of running injuries that you'd see, Patty? And then we can kind of dig into what causes them and how you'd treat them.
I think there's 2 very different approaches to. One is a bit more like tangible science numbers approach to it all, and one is more of a philosophical approach as to like why people always run into and through pain, which is just a fascinating way to think about it. So like essentially, depending on what studies and what data you look at, anywhere from 20 to 50% of runners get injured every year. But like 20 to 50% is a pretty broad range, but it basically averages out to 50%. So like 50% of runners will experience an injury every year. And that might be like a stiff Achilles that makes you miss one session, but that still counts, towards the data, but like 50%. So that's an outrageously high number. And if you think about any other sport, say you're going to go into like a season of football, knowing that 50% of your team would get injured that season, like that's ridiculous, right? Like you would do something about it. Like with those numbers, you got to do something about it. But for some reason, runners continue to get injured, and it's a really interesting situation that we're always in. And it's like, no matter the advances in technology, no matter the advances in like footwear, support, training approaches, diet, recovery, no matter all this other shit, we still get injured. So there's something going on, right? And there's two ways to look at it. One way, I suppose, is that we're really used to like running through pain and running with pain. Like it's almost like, to some extent, and there's a bit of a culture of that. And I think it comes down to like why we run, and often we run, like I'm sure all three of us run because we just love it. It feels good. We enjoy the feeling. We like where it goes, where it takes us. We like the achievements. We like the friends. Like there's so many reasons for running. Yeah. But then a lot of people run and push their bodies to the point where then they experience pain, and then they like keep running through that. And then you get into this cycle of like, oh, it hurts to run, but I'm going to keep running anyway. And it hurts to run, I'm going to keep running. And you get into the cycle of like making shit worse. And pretty quickly you've lost the fact that like running feels good and is really enjoyable. And you might push through things because you're like, oh, I want to get a 5K PB, or my training plan says this, or I've got this marathon coming up, or whatever it is. And it just happens so often that people lose sight of the fact that running is actually really fun and feels good.
100%.
And it's almost like this psychological approach of like, what's wrong with people? Why have they forgotten that running is just a nice thing to do? As opposed to like, you do know what I mean? Like, does that kind of make sense where I'm getting at?
Definitely.
It's like, I reckon a psychologist has got to get involved in a lot of injuries, because a lot of time, if you just slow down and just do a bit less, you're literally going to be fine. But people are like, want to run and run and run, but even though they have pain, it's like, just slow down. Like, and part of it is you just go back to your why. Like, why do you run? And for some people, it's to get a marathon PB. For some people, it's because it feels good. And I think if you ask people, if you go deep enough, everyone runs because they enjoy it and it feels good. And I think if you're getting injured, you're doing something wrong, you've got to sit back and have a good look at yourself. So like, I went on a bit of a tangent there, but that's one way to approach is like running injuries and like why we get injured. I think there's some weird like psychological phenomena about running, like, which is a funny thing. And it's just a discussion to have, right? There's no answer there, but absolutely. It's like, if you're constantly getting pain, it's like, maybe look at your approach to it all. Anyway, there's that. I bet you didn't expect I was going to say that. But what you did expect I was going to say was the other way to approach running injuries, which is the fact that everything's an overuse injury. Like literally everything is overuse, unless you just are unlucky and you twist your ankle on a trail, or like you get hit by a car, or there are unlucky things that can happen where you genuinely like snap or break or tear something. That's just unlucky. Even if you like tear a muscle, that's just unlucky. Like that just sucks. So there's unlucky, like traumatic things that can happen. But beyond that, and they're all quite rare, but beyond that, every single running injury is overuse to some extent. So say you've got like knee pain. If you run 200 meters, your knee's going to be fine. But if you're on 10K, your knee might hurt. So like it's an overuse thing. It's just overuse might be a kilometer or 10Ks or 150Ks a week. Like, but there's always, and this goes for every single thing in your body and your legs, every bone, muscle, joint, tendon, cartilage, everything can handle a certain amount of load. And once you put more load through that object or through that structure, that's when you get an overuse injury. So that's the case for your Achilles tendon, your shin bone, your plantar fascia, your knee joint. Everything can handle a certain amount of load. Does that kind of make sense so far?
Yeah,
absolutely.
So if that's the case, then there are two approaches to it. One is, how can we change something to put less load in that area? So like if you're getting shin splints, like how can we change something to put less load on the shin bone? Or the other thing to look at is, how can we make the shin bone stronger so that it can handle more load? So it's always like, let's get the thing strong so it can take more load before it gets injured, or like, what can we change to put less load there in the first place? And that's the case with literally everything, every structure in your leg and your body. And then probably the third aspect is, you just have to deload and run less, your total running volume, right? So like, this is what goes through my mind whenever anyone comes into the clinic injured with me, is I'm thinking, can we shift some stuff around to like take load away from the injured site? Or can we do something like usually strength work to get the thing more robust so it can handle more load? And also just look at your total running volume. You might just have to decrease that to deload the area. So does that sort of make sense there?
Yeah. Should everyone be doing this kind of strength work regardless? Because for me personally, I've always left it too late. And then I've addressed it by then doing strength work. So is that your advice to every kind of runner, to prepare yourself?
Strength work has been shown to decrease the risk of overuse injuries by 50%. And it's also been shown to improve your running economy by 4 to 8%.
Improve your running economy by 4 to 8%.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a big,
so 4 to 8%, not 48%.
Yeah.
So the Nike Next, the Nike 4% shoe.
Yeah.
So that was named 4% because in the studies they did on it, it improved your running economy by 4%. And that we've all worn those. Oh, thank you. Sorry, someone just dropped me off some beer in COVID. Sorry, that's just a knock on my door. So yeah, everyone got these Nike 4% shoes, and they legit, like, we've all run in them, right? They feel so good. They actually make you faster. But strength training makes you 4 to 8% more economical.
Wow.
So it's like wearing 2 of those pairs of shoes just
together.
Legit. And so my point of view is like, hit the gym hard and buy the shoes, you'll be fucking unstoppable.
Yeah. That's a really good point.
So Luke, to answer your question, if you don't do strength training, you're just leaving so much on the table, so much. So, and that's when I hear Dom talking about doing 150 Ks a week. I'm like, sick. That is so freaking good. But are you doing 2 strength sessions in there? And if you are, that is unreal. If you're not, I'm like, I'd go from 150K a week to 120K a week, but I do 2 strength sessions, and the results might actually be better than just more mileage.
Right.
Definitely.
Do you do strength on?
1 strength session this week, and I'm starting to feel a little bit wiry though. I think it's definitely time to start doing a bit more, and I think that advice is spot on. Yeah. Like, I feel like whenever I've felt the fittest is when I've had my strength dialed in. Like, I think it's something that gets overlooked because there's just not that same kind of clear correlation, I guess. Like, if you're doing strength work, you don't feel like, oh, I'm faster straight away. Whereas like you do a good track session, you're like, oh yeah, that definitely helped, like, with my running. And maybe that's why some people find it a bit harder at times.
Oh, definitely. And part of it is, if you do a quality strength session, you probably feel like crap for 2 days afterwards because you're tired and heavy and sore, and then that will make you feel like you can't run as well. So I understand why there's the reluctance to do it, but you only actually really see the benefits of doing it once you've done it for 3 months consistently. That's when you feel strong. That's when you'll have the results. But once you've done it for like 4 or 5 or 6 weeks pretty consistently, you stop getting that soreness the next day.
Yeah.
So I know that I'm in a position where I could hit the gym pretty hard, and the next day I might be a little bit sore, but it won't affect my running. But it's taken weeks and weeks and weeks of training consistently before you can get to the point where you thrash yourself at the gym, and then you can keep running as per normal. But I think runners just don't get past that hurdle a lot of the time, or they don't know that they need to, if that makes sense. So So Luke, to answer your question, everyone should be doing it. If you're not, you're opening yourself up to getting more overuse injuries than you might need to, and you're just leaving some training benefits on the table for sure. So and the most common thing for runners is, I don't have time, or I don't want to, or whatever. I'm like, well, if you're running 6 days a week, I'd straight away, I'd just run 4 days a week and go to the gym twice. And like, there it is. You'll actually be a better athlete for that. Yeah. That's the thing that I'm trying to get across to like anyone who I come across, because it's science, it's data. And runners don't know the feeling of being strong. Like it's we all know the feeling of being fit. Like we know what it feels like to be fit and what it feels like to be not fit. And we all know that. But the feeling of genuinely being strong is something that I don't believe a lot of runners feel, or they don't know what that feels like. And once you've got it, you're like, oh, why didn't I do this earlier? It's unreal. Yeah. So I should do it.
I definitely need to get onto that.
Yeah.
I feel I almost know that my injuries in the past have been just zero strength work, building up mileage too quickly, blowing out, having a stress reaction in my calf or something similar is just neglecting exactly what you're talking about, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So for the beginner runner, what do you think, how do you normally advise them in terms of the period of time that for them to increase their mileage? Like whenever I speak to someone that's a beginner, they're always asking, how quickly can I get into this? How quickly can I increase my mileage? Obviously it varies for sort of everybody, but what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and there is no answer. It's very multifactorial, but a lot of it comes back to like, where is your cardiovascular fitness now? But more importantly than that, it's how tolerant are all the structures in your legs? How tolerant are they to load? So like, how tolerant is your Achilles tendon to running and jumping and springing? How tolerant is your shin bone to impact on the ground? And so if I get someone who's done gymnastics and CrossFit for 2 years and then they want to start running, I'm like, shit, yeah, you're going to be great because you know how to jump and spring. You're probably strong. So those kind of people, I would see their increase in running quite rapidly. But if I get, say, like a cyclist, they might be really fit, but they just are not adapted to repeated impact on the ground. So they'll get shin splints, they'll get knee pain, they'll get Achilles issues. So they might be strong and fit, but they can't impact the ground. So it's really interesting. I mean, this is just my own anecdotal experience, but people who come from a strength training kind of background tends to do better than people who are fit, like cyclists and swimmers who then want to start to run. Or like rowers are a classic one. I see a lot of rowers who they're fit, they're like fucking tough humans, and they know how to push through pain, but they just can't handle impact on the ground. And that's really, really dangerous. If you can handle pain, but your bones and joints and tendons can't handle the repeated stress of running, that's when you get into trouble. On the other hand, if you get someone who's just a complete newbie, does not exercise at all, say they're a bit overweight, they are not fit, they don't do any strength, they don't do anything, they're going to be limited by their cardio fitness. So they can just run as much as they want to or as much as they can, and they're not going to get injured because their cardio fitness won't be big enough to injure themselves. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
So that would be their limiting factor. Yeah. So I think the more of a training background you have, the more quickly you're going to want to increase your running, and therefore there's more risk of that. But like, there's no number, there's no answer. We can't plan stuff out. It all comes down to pick an amount of running, do it, and then like see how your body goes. Like, that's all it is. And if your body gives 2 thumbs up, you just do a bit more. And if it's still good, you do a bit more, and then a bit more, and like, that's how you increase. But if you pick an amount of running and you feel a bit tired or a bit overwhelmed or a bit sore or stiff, then okay, maybe peel that back. Notice I haven't talked about like the 10% rule, because that shit doesn't exist for all the reasons I just explained. Like, everyone has their own tolerance. You can't put a number on it. People follow the 10% rule and still get injured. So it's very much has to be done by feel and by like kind of like doing a bit, feeling it, reflecting. How's everything gone? And then, can I do a bit more? Yeah, let's do a bit more. Like, that's the name of the game. And runners who have that insight and who can do that well, they avoid injury. Yeah.
Running technique, does that play much of a part in people getting injured?
Yes, definitely. You can. And the big thing with technique is everyone runs quite differently. There's no one best way to run. That's been studied and shown that it's not good or bad to heel strike. It's not good or bad to run on your toes. It just shifts where the load goes in your body. So you can, like a really basic but good example is if you heel strike, or if you land hard on your heels, you put more impact into your shin bone and your knee joint. Whereas on the flip side, if you land on your toes, you put more of the impact, you put more of the strain on your calf, your Achilles, and your plantar fascia. So one is not better than the other. But if I get someone who's like a real heavy heel striker coming in with knee pain, then we could theoretically say, hey, go like less on your heel, more on your toe, and you're going to deload your knee, but put more load on your Achilles. And like vice versa for forefoot strikers who get Achilles pain, I'm like, why don't you go on heel strike for a bit? It'll put less load on your Achilles, but more load on your knee. So you can really shift things around quite a bit. But if someone has their own technique, they're running pain-free, they're enjoying it, then there's not really any need to change anyone's running technique. With the one exception of if they're overstriding, you got to get rid of that. You can't overstride because that's just inefficient.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. And that's taken me the last 10 years of gaining knowledge to summarize it like that. But it is like that simple. It's been studied quite a lot, and that there's no difference in, so let's say foot strike, right? You can be a heel striker, midfoot or forefoot. It's been studied and shown that there's no difference in performance between heel, mid and forefoot. And there's no difference in injury risk between heel, mid and forefoot. It just changes what injuries you will get, if that makes sense.
Right. So if you're a heavy heel striker, you've heard it's not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing. It's just, changing the nature of the injuries you're going to get. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And I guess the other word you just used there is heavy, right? I don't want anyone to be heavy. And that's probably just reducing the overall impact on the ground. So you can be a really light, smooth, efficient heel striker, and that's fantastic.
Yeah.
But if you're a heavy heel striker and you can hear someone thudding on the ground, maybe we can work on that. Yeah. So probably heavy is the word I would change there.
Yeah.
You don't want to be heavy. You don't want to overstride. If you're really light on your feet and not overstriding, great, play on, do whatever you want.
Okay.
Right, until you get injured, and then change it.
Okay. I have a question around foam rolling and stretching. How big of a part do those two things play in avoiding injury?
0.0%.
Wow. Okay. So
yeah, do you want me to expand on that?
So foam rolling. So foam rolling every night is pointless?
No, it's not pointless, but it's not going to prevent injury.
Okay.
So it's like foam rolling feels quite good, and you feel like you're doing something which is good. You're taking care of your body theoretically, but I think it does not prevent injuries whatsoever. I think it feels good, and it can reduce the sensation of like tension you get around muscles and joints. So that's nice and useful. I actually use foam rolling when I have pain or when I have a niggle. Like if I'm dealing with, say, knee pain, I will foam roll my legs just on that side, just to relieve some tension around that. And that helps. And it's a very good short-term symptom reliever, put it that way. But if you're uninjured and you're rolling every night to try and remain uninjured, you're just wasting your time.
Okay.
What about like range of motion? Would there be any benefits in like performance from foam rolling or?
No. So foam rolling has been shown to like very minimally change range of motion for a very short period of time. So if you foam roll, you can change your flexibility for maybe 10 minutes. But if you test again the next day, it's back to the same. So like it doesn't have much of an effect there. But also like mobility is so overrated if you want to run, mind you. So if you want to run, if you think about your running stride, all you need to do is like lift your leg up in front of you a little bit and then push your leg back behind you a little bit. That's all you need to do. The range of motion needed for running is tiny. So we all have that, like literally every single person has enough range of motion to run, unless you've had some kind of wacky surgery or like you've broken bones maybe. But everyone has the range of motion to run, and trying to improve beyond that range of motion is almost pointless. Like some people are trying to like really pull their leg over their head and stretch their glutes and do all this shit. I'm like, you don't need to move your glutes in that direction to run. There's no point.
Yeah. I guess a lot of those things are things that I would do in a warm up to try and get ready to run. Is there any value in that, or is it?
There is. Yeah. I think a warm up should be like, I use some like stupid big words, but like a neuromuscular primer. So it should get your joints and muscles and everything like ready to go. And part of that is it's almost like a brain muscle connection. So do something to like kind of feel your muscles. And that might be jogging. It might be doing some like skipping and jumping and some hops and those like dynamic stretches that we do. They're great. A lot of people choose to do like a glute activation thing, like, you know, pop a band around your legs and do something to feel your glutes. And like, that's great. I've got no problem with that at all. And I think something to distinguish here is that dynamic stretches versus like static stretches, right? So static stretches, there's no point doing it ever.
Yeah.
But dynamic stretching is good to do as part of warm up. Yeah. That'll get you fired up and ready to run.
Yeah. So it's more just about those like neuromuscular, like what you're saying, connections, and making sure that your body kind of is getting into the right positions when you run, sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think the main thing, if we're talking like warm ups here, you just need to gradually increase the intensity of the movement you're about to do. So say I'm basically, the more intense the workout I'm about to do, the more I'll warm up. If I'm just going to go for like a 5K jog, I do literally zero warm up. There's no need. But if you're going to do like a 5K race or like some intervals at the track, you should probably prepare and prime your body for that. But the best way to do that is just to start slowly and gradually bring up the intensity of that. So that's why you do like a K or two as like a warm-up jog, and then some run throughs and some hops and skips to get like your calves ready to spring, to get your hammies ready to power you along, but gradually bringing up the intensity of that over 5 to 10 minutes, so that by the end of the warm-up you're a bit puffed and like there's blood in your muscles and you're ready to go. Like that's all the warm-up has to be, nothing fancier than that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But like if you look on Instagram and shit, there's always people doing impressive stuff that is useless.
That's a big insight for me personally, because I've been guilty of sort of foam rolling and doing stuff like that, thinking the opposite of it being effective. But in actual fact, doing like my calf raises and stuff like that would be much more beneficial, would you say?
Yeah, for sure. And like that's my like, that's where I sit on it, is like, if you've done your run, if you've done your strength training, if you've done all the good stuff that's proven to be good for you, and you also want to stretch and foam roll, like great, I literally don't care, you're not doing any harm. But if people say you've only got 15 minutes and you do 15 minutes of stretching instead of strength, that's when I'm a bit frustrated. I'm like, stretching's not doing anything for you. The 15 minutes of strength is doing. So that's when I'm like, people could use their time better. Just do stuff that's actually good for you. But if you've done your run, you've done everything, and then you want to stretch and you want to foam roll, like I don't care. Go for it.
Okay. Do you have a sort of I guess it's probably different for every runner, but is there a go-to 15-minute strength workout that someone can do at home that you would recommend, or do they really have to come in and see you and figure out what they need to do on a personal level?
There's a quote that I like. It just says you can't go wrong getting strong. So if someone's like, should I do calf raises? I'll be like, yes. And if they say, should I do squats? I'll say yes. Should I do lunges? Yes. Like do it all, because there's none of it's going to be harmful or bad for you. I think every runner should do bicep curls, very important for the final 100 meters straight of that 5K rate. Yeah, there's kind of like 4 things that I want all runners to do. Something to work your calves, something to challenge you on one leg in like a stability sense, and something that mimics a squat, and something that mimics a deadlift. So basically, 3 big movement patterns: a squat movement pattern, a deadlift movement pattern, a calf raise, and something on one leg. They're the 4. And there's like millions of varieties of each of those. But as long as you hit those 4, then we're good. So in 15 minutes, you could do a squat, a deadlift, some calf raises, and some stability stuff, right? And that can be a 1-leg squat, a 1-leg deadlift. It could just be balancing. It could be anything that kind of engages that stability part of your brain.
What about core?
Yeah.
Core.
What were you going to say?
Sorry, core.
Core, sorry.
Is that worth doing, or probably not before the other things?
So there's a big difference between abs and core. So abs are the muscles like your six pack. The abs are the muscles you see at the beach, and they actually have nothing to do with your core. So your core it's basically like a cube, like a box. And the front of your core is these muscles that live below your abs. So if you were to peel away your abs and look at what's underneath, there's another layer of muscle. That's the front of your core. The back of your core is like your spine, and the sides is like your oblique muscles. The top of your core is your diaphragm. The bottom of your core is your pelvic floor. So it's this cube, this box that you want to train, and your abs are completely separate from it, and they have almost no role in running, but they look good at the beach. So again, like, should we do sit-ups? Like, there's no reason not to, but like, it's not really going to help you running, but they'll make you look better. So go for it. But in terms of core, I do very, 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 very minimal core work, because when you do a squat, when you do a deadlift, when you do anything on one leg, your core is always going to be engaged to some extent. So in the exercises I do, a lot of them challenge my core as well. So I therefore don't choose to do more core on top of that. But again, if I did, it wouldn't be a bad thing. It would only be a good thing if I did more core. So I just don't think it's high up on the priority list, because you kind of hit your core with all the other exercises anyway.
I guess if you've got proper technique, you're probably going to need to use your core. And
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
probably worth strengthening your core to a certain extent until you can do things with good technique. And then, I don't know, doing the exercises will kind of take care of it from there.
Yeah, exactly right, Don. That's a good way to summarize it. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Can we go through some of the common running injuries, or what, just, I guess, what are the most common things you see from beginners coming in to see you? And just, I guess, some of the easiest way to prevent them. I mean, we've gone over getting strong, but just in a more general sense, what would you say, Patty?
And it's the same, no matter what the injury, it's pretty much the same factors are always at play here. So if we think about, say, someone coming in with knee pain, then we got to think, like, what are the primary reasons that your knee is not tolerating the load you're putting on it? Is it because you're not strong, in which case the solution would be do strength work? Or for knee pain, are you putting heaps of load on your knee because you've got poor running technique? Or we can change that. Or is your knee sore because you've just run too much for your body, and then that's kind of like your weakest point? So for me, it's always those three. It's always going to be, can we change technique to put less impact there? Can we make you stronger so you can handle more load? Can we change your overall running volume to let stuff calm down? So in terms of knee pain, like that's how we'd approach it. If someone's got, like, let's say an Achilles tendinopathy, then yeah, I'd look at them run, and if they run on their forefoot, cool. Can we go back towards more of a midfoot or a heel strike? That'll deload your Achilles, and then, like, you got to, like, settle stuff down. And once things are settled and kind of out of pain, that's when you go and do heaps of calf raises and get the Achilles strong. But in the meantime, the trick is, like, managing their running load. Try and keep running as much as you can, but allowing the Achilles to settle down. So, like, Achilles and knee pain are probably two of the most common, and shin splints as well, I suppose. See them, like, every day, but it's always the same approach with all of them. Do you want to, like, pick one, Luke, and just go through it?
Okay. Can I go through? I'll go through a personal one. Just
let's do it.
When I was training for the Melbourne Marathon a little bit of time ago, I picked up what I thought was my calf. I had a bit of a calf injury where I went to a physio that was local to me, and he basically said, you've got to, more than likely, sounds like you have a stress reaction just from overuse in your calf. And it was quite, like, I wasn't sure, like, every time I get sort of injured before it gets too bad, I'll go to the physio just to make sure, because I get a little bit scared that I'm, going to be out for a longer period of time. And when I was there, I said, can I keep training? And he determined, based on in my calf, that I can actually keep training through the same load, because I was in that critical period in the last, like, 3 weeks or the last, like, month, where I just didn't want to slow down, which is actually what you were mentioning before, is you probably should really reevaluate why you're training if you're training through pain. But he made the distinction that I could push through it. How do you make that? How can you make that distinction? Because I was worried that I would be, get worse, but I didn't. He was right. Like I was able to train through it.
Yeah. So there's a few different things. So if someone can like walk around with zero to no pain, zero to minimal pain, and if someone can perform like a basic bunch of movements, then that will let me determine if it's a straight yes or a straight no, right? Like if, say, someone's coming in with something in their calf, like you did,
yeah,
a very simple test is, can you hop up and down? And so like on one leg, just hopping up and down, if you can do that and actually feel fine to do it, then yes, you can run.
Mm-hmm.
Say you tried to hop up and down on one leg and you did one hop and then you grabbed your calf and went, oh shit, that hurt. That's a straight no for me.
Yeah.
Like do not run
mm-hmm.
until you can at least start to move and jump on your and hop and up and down on that one leg. And that's basically a determinant of like, can you run or should you not run if we're dealing with a calf injury?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you probably would have been able to hop that day.
Yep.
Then it's like, then we look to your pattern of symptoms. Now that when we're talking about pattern of symptoms, we're talking about during the run, what happens after you finish running. So like, let's say during a run, does it warm up and kind of go away as you run, or as you run, does it kind of get worse? So there's only one of two options there. As you're running, is it getting better or is it getting worse?
Mm-hmm.
But then there's like, how do you pull up after the run? So like the next day, quite often you can run and have minimal pain, but then you get out of bed the next day and you can't walk. So it's like, how are you during the run? How do you pull up the next day? And then what's it like over the course of like 1 to 2 weeks? Is it actually gradually getting worse or is it gradually getting better? So that's when I ask myself, well, not myself, that's when I ask my patient, like all of those questions. And if it's actually trending to get better over the last 1 or 2 weeks, and that's a fantastic sign and you can keep running. But if someone's running and the pain gets worse during a run, or if the next day after a run, they're really in a lot of pain, then we have to reduce the running load. So if they've shown, like if you've shown me, Luke, that you can hop up and down, great, you can run, but maybe we just actually need to reduce the volume so that you start responding better the next day. And so we start getting better on like a more of a macro level. Yeah. So there's always like I want to determine on the spot while you're there in front of me. It's like, can you run or can you not run right now? And then it's just working out the volume, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a key distinction, because if I didn't go to the physio at that point, I might have stopped running, but then I had another situation training for a different training block where it was the same sort of injury in my calf. I guess instead of progressing through the 2 weeks or the week, when I started running, it affected my running form where I was sort of like almost hopping. And that's when I knew, okay, this is not gonna work. And I went back to my physio, and then I was out for maybe like over a month or month and a half. So it was the same sort of pain, but it got worse. So those might have been two different. What you're saying in your previous sort of statement is like, if it's getting worse, then that's when I had to stop.
Yeah. And that's like when you say you were running, but having to limp or having to adjust your stride to avoid pain, that for me, like that's a big red flag for me. If you're limping or if you're doing something different, that's a red flag. And I bet $100 that you wouldn't have been able to.
I didn't try actually, but it was more on my first one. I never had to alter my stride, and it kind of was just like a pain through. I don't know if it's through the calf, but when I did a session, for example, it would warm up, like you're saying, it would be fine, and then when I stopped, it would be almost worse.
Yeah. So it's always. This is where it becomes more of an art than a science.
Yeah, it's
because you've got to make
tricky.
like judgment calls, and you've got to have a bit of intuition with this stuff. Go on.
Yeah, I was just saying it gets tricky as well, because what everyone else feel, like you're interpreting people's feelings of pain as well. That would be tricky, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Oh, it is, and it's fascinating. Like something could be a 2 out of 10 pain to someone and be a 7 out of 10 pain to someone else. It's really interesting, and like pain as a sensation is like a fascinating topic, and it means different things to different people. Which is
okay. That is that a common one through the calf like that, or what?
So I think there's a bit of a terminology mix up there, because a stress reaction that you were saying, a stress reaction is something you can only get in bone. So either you're talking about a stress reaction in your shin, or you're talking about a muscle tear in your calf. So it sounds like it could be either of the two. But
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I kind of just,
If,
that's my own terminology. I think
yeah,
I would have got it
if
mixed
the word
up.
if the word stress reaction were thrown around, that's talking about bone. So it would have been a stress reaction in your shin bone, probably. Yeah.
Okay.
So with that, yeah, often you don't need to completely stop. When there's some mild bone stress, then yeah, it's almost always like decrease your load a little bit to allow some like natural healing to take place. Like if you're banging out 100K weeks and you're getting pain, maybe you can go and do 60K weeks and allow healing to take place. Like you don't have to stop, if that makes sense.
Mm. Mm. Do you see many runners come in when it's too late to deload? Like, do you see a lot of people?
Yeah.
They've taken it too far?
Probably most people, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I think that's what you're talking
mindset.
about.
Yeah.
Like when we first started the interview. But yeah, like I get pretty scared and go straight to physio straight away. But I imagine a lot of people would be like, keep running. Yeah.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking for me when I have to tell someone to stop running, or when I have to tell someone they've got a stress fracture. Like that's, pardon me, that's really heartbreaking and a challenging part of my job, because someone's coming in as a runner who loves running and wants to do it every day, and I have to say, oh, you can't run for 12 weeks. Like that's heartbreaking for me. But the vast majority of people, you just have to like reduce their load to some extent, and it's just working out whether that's reduced by 20% or reduce it by 80%. We don't know, but yeah, it's more common that people just are able to keep running but just reduce the load, or like take a week off and then like shit will settle and get back into it. But that's something we're always trying to get across is I'd rather, like Luke, I'd rather you, where you come in and you're unsure of what something is, but that's why we're here, is like, let's get a diagnosis and then work out straight away if it's serious or not. And I'd much rather someone come in and be like, yeah, cool, it might hurt a little bit. It's not that serious. It's low risk. Keep running. See you never. Like that's a really good outcome for me, rather than, yeah, you've been pushing through pain for 6 weeks. Now I have to tell you to stop for a month. Like that's not great. So I always advocate for people to come in, like if they don't know what the injury is or there's concern, just come in as soon as you can, rather than run through it for a month, because that running through it for a month might then put you out for a month instead of like, you know what I mean? It's so we're trying to get people in early for sure.
Yeah, you are right. It's more of definitely sounds like more of an art than you can't really give a certain answer. Dom, I remember you've been pretty good with injuries, touch wood, but you had a bit of, what was the one you went through after your first marathon? I think you had like a bit of plantar fasciitis.
Yeah, a little bit of plantar fasciitis. But yeah, I think I've been pretty good with injuries coming from a middle distance background. All that strength work and stuff like that there's a lot more emphasis on it. Whereas like distance running, it's like, okay, we're running, go run, you're going to get better at distance running. Whereas the shorter the distance, the more, I don't know, reliance on strength work and other things is kind of like naturally part of the training. Yeah, I don't know. That's just my 2 cents worth. But yeah, I had plantar fasciitis and took about, I think 2 or 3 weeks off, and it kind of went away. I think I was fortunate that I got in early enough that it wasn't too bad.
And you started strengthening your foot specifically, right? That's what.
Yeah. I think like foot strength is kind of something that I've never done before until I got plantar fasciitis. And yeah, you don't realize how important your feet are to running. And I think that's probably something that a lot of people overlook until it's too late. Yeah.
Yeah. Patty, is that a common one that you see, for injuries with the feet more specifically? And do you, like, is it beneficial? Obviously it is, but given a shorter time frame to do strength work, do you do specific things for your feet or prescribe that for your clients?
It's the exact same as your core. So where possible, I try and train barefoot and have like quite an engaged foot on the ground. So once you've got the basics of like knowing what's good, healthy foot position, pardon me, knowing how to use your big toe is really important. So once you have like the control and the dexterity of the foot, you know how to use your toes and anchor it on the ground well, then doing a barefoot squat becomes like a foot strengthening drill, and doing calf raises becomes foot strength. So there's a really good study I read a few years ago that that showed two groups of people. One group was given foot strengthening drills to do for 6 months. One group was just told to wear like minimal barefoot style shoes for 6 months. And then they like scanned them at the beginning, at the end. And after 6 months, they had both gotten the size of the muscles in their feet had both gotten the same size bigger, if that makes sense. Like they're both grown muscle at the same rate. And that's like doing specific foot strength work versus just wearing like non-supportive shoes. So I think it points to a bigger picture of like the shoes that we all wear for 15 hours a day are actually not doing anything good for our feet. So if you're always, say, like wearing a leather dress shoe, which would like cramp your feet and prevent your foot from working well, or say you're wearing like quite a cushioned supportive running shoe all day, then your foot's not allowed to be able to move and flex and engage as it would normally. So one of the best things you can do for your feet is to stop wearing horrible shoes for 15 or 18 hours a day and just like let your feet fly, like free your foot. That's one of the best things to do. But if you can't do that because you have to wear stupid leather shoes or whatever, then hell yeah, you should do some foot strength work.
Okay. Are there any, actually I had another question. Go on, Dom.
I was going to move away from some physio chat and
okay.
about something else.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know. Another good question we've been asking people is, what's your favorite race, Paddy? And just talk us through it.
I think my favorite race, I've said this for years, is the 6 foot track marathon. It's pretty wild. So it's 45 Ks up in the Blue Mountains. But if you haven't heard of the 6 foot track, or if anyone listening doesn't know about it, so it's 45 Ks of trails, but 45 K is only 3 K longer than a road marathon. But to get an estimate for your time, it'll take you to complete 6 foot. You take your road marathon and add 50%. So if you're running a road marathon in 3 hours, you're looking at 4.5 hours for 6 foot track, but it's only 3 K longer. So that gives you an idea of the difficulty and the challenge of the terrain. But it's a fantastic event, I think, because it's run by the Rural Fire Service, and it's a non-for-profit. It's just to raise funds for the Rural Fire Service out in the Blue Mountains, and all the aid stations are manned by fireys, which is really cool. And there's just such an energy and a camaraderie and atmosphere at that race. It's just absolutely incredible. There's a water crossing that's usually like chest height or waist, the finish line coming down into a valley where you can hear cowbells coming up out of the valley for the last like 2 or 3 kilometers. It's just this most electric atmosphere. Yeah. It's my most favorite race for sure. And this year I'm doing it for the 7th time. It's hectic. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
You're doing it, Dom, you mentioned?
Yeah, first time.
It's great.
What about any particular runs, like a day out at 6 foot, or I don't know, maybe elsewhere?
Oh, just like tracks that I like to run on.
Oh, no, just like a particular race.
Oh, one of mine. Geez. It would have to be City to Surf 2019.
Is that in your budgies or?
Yeah, it's because I was in my budgies and I got on the news. So it's the way the City to Surf works is in the starting groups, there's all the different start groups, like the green group, the blue group, the red group, whatever. But there's they call them the elite group, and there's only like 20 or 30 in there. They're like the pros. And then just behind the elite is the preferred group. And there might be like 200 or 300 preferred runners. And then behind them is the red group, but there's a few thousand. So I qualified to get into the preferred group. So not in the top 30, but like in the next kind of 200, I got in that group. Big dog. And so as part of that, they allow you to warm up in front of the start line, which is kind of cool. You get to, when everyone else is standing there huddled in their starting groups, you're allowed to run around and warm up and do your drills. And then they corral you in, like, all right, preferred runners, get in. They kind of push you back behind a rope. And then lastly, the elite runners, then they corral the elite runners in and say, all right, you stand behind that one. And they just divide you by like this, they pull between you, like a rope, they pull between the preferred. And I just happened to bend, literally I just bent down to tie my shoes up, tying. And when I stood up, I just happened to be on the elite side of the rope. And I was standing in the elites, like not intentionally at all. And I look back and on the other side of the rope is all my preferred friends. And I'm like, And then I look back ahead of me and there's the start line. Like literally my foot was on the start line of the ski surf. And I'm like, oh shit, okay, well, I'm in the elites, I'm on the start line and I'm wearing budgie smugglers. I just decided to wear budgie smugglers that year. Me and another mate did. But I'm standing there in my bright green Speedos and the camera pans across you. And like, because I'm in the front row, I'm on the start line with the elites, the camera's on me. And it was such a cold day. Like it was freezing. This was pumped full of adrenaline. And then when the gun goes off, I think my first K was like 2:40 for my first K or something, just sprinting down the start line. It was just, and there's these great photos of like the elites leading out the race and I'm there next to them with my budgies. It was great fun. And I'd never, ever, in my whole life, I'd never, ever once been wolf whistled, ever, once. But that day I got wolf whistled like 15 times. It's quite cool. Just a really fun experience. Actually, kind of, the first K was clearly too quick. The second K, I dropped down to like 5-minute pace. But then one of my mates ran past me and I thought, I can't let him beat me. So then I actually came back to like a good pace and ended up with a nice finishing time. But doing it all on my budgies was good fun. Yeah, and there's like, you can't take running too seriously. You're like, it's interesting that you talk about like what's one of my most memorable running experiences, and it was the one time I just took the piss out of it. Like it was fun. I was going to tell you about like my marathon PB, but I don't know, it's more fun just to take the piss and have a laugh, I reckon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's so good.
Yeah,
it's such a good story.
We're gonna have to find one of those photos and put it on the podcast title.
I'll send it to you.
Oh dear. Last question, just a little bit about your podcast. You've been doing that for a while. Yeah, it's quite a big podcast. How did you get into doing that in the first place?
Yeah, so it's called That's Running, and I think we've done 100 episodes, maybe 102 episodes or something like that.
Yeah.
It was just me and my colleagues. So I'm a physio. My colleague Mike, he's a massage therapist, and we both just primarily treat runners. Like we both are runners, and we just both treat runners. And kind of like we were having a rant one day. We're like, runners are just inherently dumb. They're freaking stupid, and they keep doing dumb things to hurt themselves. Like we just had a bit of a rant, and we're like, it's not that complicated. Like you just do this, and you can reduce your injuries, and people make dumb decisions. And we just had this rant, this discussion between us. And my boss like stood there watching us. And then once we were done, he came in and he's like, guys, if I put a microphone between you, you would have such a good podcast. And I'm like, yeah, right. What's a podcast? And then we decided, we were like, fuck it, why not? Let's do a podcast. And really the way I see it is like, we just get to chat about running. So me and probably like you guys, right? Like you just love this stuff. Me and Mike love it. That's why we chewed through 100 episodes, anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour, and we just got to talk about running. So yeah, we did that. And I guess it came from a place of we're both health professionals who work in the running space. We're both coaches. We both love it. Like, and we feel like we can help people and put good info out there. There's a lot of terrible, just incorrect information out there. So part of what we saw is we can put some good info out there, and that was the motivation to do it. Sorry. Awesome. Sorry, someone just called me. That was the motivation to do it. And we got to have some fantastic conversations on the way. It's really cool.
All righty.
Awesome.
Well, you've certainly provided a lot of insight for, I guess, whoever's going to listen to this. We're still in the very early days, but we really appreciate it. It's been awesome.
Yeah.
I love coming on. I'll come on anytime, just chat shit. It's great.
Yeah, no worries.